Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Human Echoes podcast.
I'm Albert Berg,
I'm Tony Southcott.
coming to you today with our review of the classic movie UHF, starring
Goodness.
the Weird Al himself. Not this one. I'm doing my best to be weird today, though, Tony. You can't see
I'd
it,
say
but
that's
it's
a
awesome.
pretty much everyday thing. Like you are unapologetically weird about a lot of things.
I am. We got an interesting question that we'll get to later, but it kind of ties into. I don't generally feel bad about, what I like. I'm totally down with being whatever kind of odd that I am. So
Yeah, let that freak flag fly, sort of thing.
I think it comes from being homeschooled. Like I think, I got, you have that like awkward homeschooler thing where they don't fully understand social cues. I was homeschooled, and so like I don't quite have the whole sense of like I have to do everything like everybody else does it.
Yeah,
I don't know. It's a weird
it's a
thing.
little bit of non-conformity there.
I'm gonna take this off though because it's hurting my nose.
I can't see what he has on, so I don't know if he has like a clown nose or what's going on.
Oh, it was my stormtrooper mask.
Oh, you actually
I have a
sound
full
pretty good
size
for it. I was
stormtrooper
surprised.
mask that I bought at the thrift store for like $3.
That's pretty
It's
awesome.
actually pretty legit, but it's the one from the Clone Wars, so you got to deal with that. But yeah.
The problem with the Clone Wars wasn't the outfits.
No, well, hey, at least they actually built this one, Tony.
Yeah.
This is a physical. That's a physical thing, as opposed to in the Clone Wars where they were just like, CG's good enough.
Everyone.
Which the weird thing was, it wasn't good enough at the time. George Lucas just was like, the CG stuff is awesome, but he really had no idea how it worked. And he just thought he could slap anything together, and the guys who were actually in the tech side of it were like, "Oh, you're sending us this garbage footage. What are we supposed to do with this?" This is not about UHF though, so we're supposed to be focusing on UHF, Tony. But that's our new mandate is to get into the movie right at the beginning of the podcast. Although since it is Weird Al, I think we're allowed to be a little bit crazy this time around.
And I'm not wearing sunglasses because of any particular thing to do with Weird Al or prop. It's just I can't see with this light blaring right in my face whenever my eyes are this sensitive. So
Tony's still dealing with his iritis. How is that going, by the way, Tony?
It's back in both eyes this morning.
What?
It's back in both eyes this morning.
Daggum! Come on, it's supposed to go away! I was told it was gonna go away!
I was too. So now I've got to probably get like a full-on like oral pack of prednisone and do that whole thing. You know how fun that is. And like I'm so over it. This has been going on since June 1st. It is now almost August.
This is like literally the day we started doing podcasting full time. I know you can't tell from how good we are at it, but the day we started, Tony gets sick, and he hasn't got
I was getting sick before that with the eye thing. Like it was in my right eye originally. Now it's then it was in the left eye. Now it's in both eyes, and it's really annoying because I have to get like 2 inches away from my screen to read anything. But anyway, this isn't about UHF.
We're not talking around the movie, I swear. I love this movie. How did you feel about it, Tony? Had you seen it before?
I had not. I'd always heard of it. Like I used to watch his morning kid show, things like that. So I knew he had a lot of creativity for film. But
did Weird Al have a morning a kid show?
Yeah, it was hilarious and also really, really weird. Which, that's the moniker. But I could see you really enjoying that. It might be a little bit, it might be 2 or 3 years out before AJ would like it.
Right.
But it's definitely an interesting show.
I love that this guy is so just bizarrely talented and creative. This is a comedy in sort of the vein of Airplane, but a little bit more serious. It takes itself just slightly more serious than Airplane, but it's still throwing gags at the screen left and right.
And it's like the most 80s movie I've ever seen.
Oh, even worse than Terminator or Commando?
Way worse than those as far as 80s. It's the standard, you meet the opposition who's either a snot-nosed teenager or the CEO, just the way things always end up turning out, the same characters, all those same tropes from the 80s movies. South Park did an episode explaining all exactly how it works at a ski resort. It's just interesting that they just they went just all out that exact format.
Well, I was gonna
But
say it's obviously not. It's doing all that stuff on purpose. It's not
yeah,
like
very much so.
they're very much winking at the camera. All of the villains are insanely over the top.
Yeah.
But it's such a great celebration too of fun and art and people. The idea that everyday people will respond if you follow your passion and you recognize creativity. So I thought it was interesting too. Weird Al is not. He's sort of the protagonist, but really, like, he's not the star, if you will, of this movie. I think that really there's a argument to be made that the
Michael
star
Richards.
character is Stanley Spadowski.
Yep.
And
It's for all of those who haven't seen it.
Do what?
I'd never actually seen Michael Richards in anything else before Seinfeld, and he nails it in this movie. He goes
He's
a little
so
bit.
good. I didn't know. I'm admission time, Tony. I've never seen Seinfeld. But he's so great in this, and I have no idea what he actually is like in real life. But he gives himself over to this part so much that I totally believe that there is at least some part of him that is that crazy and that fun-loving and that just off the wall.
You didn't hear about his whole stand-up comedy thing that happened?
No.
He got whenever you're in Seinfeld and people look at you as the crazy guy, he's about half as crazy as he is in UHF in Seinfeld. He's just the weird neighbor that just pops into the room all the time.
Right.
And he got into stand-up after Seinfeld was over, but he didn't have the whole 10, 15 years of experience you need to really be a headliner, but he was kind of working off the name. And so he found himself 30 minutes into a set where almost nobody was laughing, and he started trying to work the crowd, and he ended up just dropping a bunch of N-words and running around the stage yelling at these guys.
Wow.
He got lost, just completely in over his head and just started screaming that out. And he's just a strange guy.
Well, I'm sorry to hear that happened to him, and I can imagine that would be a very difficult position to be in, although it doesn't excuse bad behavior at all.
Yeah.
But in this film, I fully enjoyed his performance, and he gave a great, I don't know, he really just sunk into that character and kind of, again, embodied, I think, the childlike enthusiasm that... It was interesting because if you're going to say that this film has any message at all, and you might not want to look that deep, but I'm always looking for something that it's saying, and as somebody who wants to create and likes to make things, I thought that it was interesting that George Newman actually mostly isn't the content creator. He's playing the guy who's recognizing that there is value in these crazy off-the-wall people who are doing their thing and being passionate about what they're passionate about. And obviously it's Weird Al's movie and it has all the gags. I'm sure he wrote a lot of the stuff, but it's not about him saving the station. It's about him helping other people save the station, if that makes sense.
Yeah, about giving it to the community and just kind of promoting the talent within.
Right, and
he lets the engineer have his Secrets of the Universe show and just all this other stuff.
It's really about this movie is 15 years too early because this movie is for the YouTube age.
Yeah.
This movie is about YouTube before YouTube hit. It was about how anybody can be a star, how everybody has something in them that if they tap deep down into and bring that out and really show their true selves to people without fear, that gets a response and you can make money off of that. And 10 years later, we're finally seeing that happen with the YouTube boom.
Yeah, for
sure. I mean, it's way more than 10 years after this, but 1999, we didn't even have YouTube in 1999.
2005 is whenever it started becoming more prominent. 2007 is where you could monetize anything, I think.
Right. So it's a fascinating, really prescient look. It almost, I wonder how it played today, then compared to today, because today we know all this. Today this isn't a revelation to see that anybody can sort of get up and do their own thing and make their own show and potentially be popular or not. We certainly haven't hit it rich yet, Tony, as far as, the YouTube monetization money goes, but we have, people do respond even in our small community. There are people who are I like these guys. they're saying something in a way that, even if it's not, top tier professional produced quality, they are doing something in a way that resonates with me.
Yeah, or just even like whenever we put something up for Dwarf Fortress and we get like Reddit being super nice to us, it's just a different way to look at starting that game and things like that. We found a lot of little ways to make it interesting, and it's awesome that like this movie just encourages that. I have one thing to say about this movie that's a little bit negative, in that give it at least 30 minutes, because the first 15 or so were really hard for me to like.
Really? You didn't like the Indiana Jones gag where the boulder was chasing it everywhere?
It took me a while to get into the movie. Like, I tried to watch it with a girlfriend. She was like, I'm not watching this. Go home and watch it. Like, and it was genuinely hard for me to get into for a few minutes. I can't remember what gag it was exactly, but whenever I got home and started up, I was completely sold. It shows itself as the 1989 film that it is. I can't remember the movies that it came out with. It was something like Empire Strike. No, I don't know if it was Empire Strikes Back or Return of the Jedi. What did it get matched between that made this movie completely tank in theaters? Do you remember?
I don't know. Did it tank? I have no idea what the history of this movie is.
Horrible in theaters, but it also was like in the same weekend as a Star Wars movie and something else.
Okay.
Or was Jaws or something like that. No, Jaws was late 70s. I can't remember the exact movie, but I know that this movie basically just completely vanished from theaters within a week or two.
That is so disappointing. And I understand that it's, like with many films we review, it's not necessarily for everybody, but I think that there's a lot of broad-based humor here. I guess I can understand your sort of hesitation at the very beginning. I thought it was brilliant. I loved all the little bits with the Indiana Jones like dream sequence to start with, and that kind of like leads you into him, and he's a little bit of a grating character to start with, but when he like throws that mustard on those guys, like that's within the first 5 minutes. I don't know. I thought that was great, and I have the benefit of coming in this movie after like 2 or 3 viewings. This is not my first rodeo with UHF, so maybe if it was a first time viewing, I would feel the same way as you, but there are gags in the very beginning. And especially knowing that he becomes less annoying as the...
Yeah, I think that was specifically what it was. I was just a little bit annoyed by his character, which is weird because I'm a huge Weird Al fan. Like, the first concert I ever went to was Weird Al. Like, he sat on the girl's lap next to me and ripped off some boxers and handed them to her.
I've always wanted to go to a Weird Al concert. I've never been to, like, really any concert ever. But I think he would put on a good show. And I need to do it soon because, I mean, he made this in 89. Like, we're all getting older, Tony, and he...
Yeah, but he looks younger than he did in this movie. Like, he's going backwards in aging.
Okay, I'm just saying, everybody ages eventually, and I need to see him while he's still, like, able to do all the crazy stuff that he's able to do.
Yeah, he's still just, like, full of enthusiasm and energy and everything else.
Yeah. But I thought, it was interesting. His character was almost a little bit back and forth because he would do the crazy over-the-top stuff, but then, like, when he's in the manager mode, he actually, like, he settles down. When he becomes the manager of this TV station and when he's managing other people, like, all that persona kind of goes away and he's actually interacting and sort of level-headed and, like, actually buckled down to do the work that he needs to do. And I thought that was an interesting sort of... I don't know if it's a contrast on purpose or if it's just sort of inconsistent writing, but I do think it's fascinating that, if you want to dig the parallel even deeper, but find the meaning, that he needed the thing to do, the thing that he was doing to sort of ground him. Yeah. And the one thing, even after he's a manager of the TV station, the one thing that really has him off balance is the fact that his girlfriend's still, not talking to him. And so you still hear a little bit of the annoyance when he's trying to get her back in with his phone call where he's just like, please,
pick up the phone.
I thought that shot was a missed opportunity because there was a potential there for, like, her to be sitting there listening to him begging, and then, like, the camera to, like, show a wide shot and have, like, I don't know, like, 3 or 4 of her friends just sitting there, like, looking at her, like, what is this guy doing? I thought that would have, like, capped that perfectly.
Yeah. This is what it opened against in that same month. Indiana Jones, The Last Crusade, Ghostbusters 2, Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, Lethal Weapon 2, Batman, License to Kill, When Harry Met Sally, and Weekend at Bernie's. So that's what it had to contend with in the same month as it was
Those
released.
are all. I've not seen all those films, but I know all those films' names. I think that's some pretty strong competition.
Yeah.
That's
Especially
why you gotta
whenever,
be smart about your
Jones,
scheduling
which you're
movies.
parodying,
Studios.
comes out at the same time.
Sorry?
Said especially whenever you're parodying a movie that's coming out at the same time.
I don't know that they were parodying Rambo in that one sequence.
Yeah, well, I'm talking about Indiana Jones.
Oh, okay.
That's the bad. Like, you open the same weekend as that, and, like, your first scene is making fun of it, or parodying it.
I don't know that is necessarily what sunk it. Everybody just wanted to see Indiana Jones more.
It's just funny that how much the influence was there. Also, like, I kept thinking back to Dude Bro Party Massacre and all the commercials. Like,
the weird thing for this is I saw this film probably when I was in my mid-20s, but in my early days I was a big conservative radio listener, and every once in a while on Rush Limbaugh, he would, like, if he didn't have a commercial in the commercial break, he would play gag commercials, and one of the commercials he would play was for Spatula City. He would play the Spatula City, for all your spatula needs. And, like, he would run through that whole thing, just the audio of it. But when I watched that, I was like, oh my gosh, he didn't make that? That came from this movie? It just blew my mind that he didn't have that, like, as some kind of audio clip that he did. Sorry for all you Rush Limbaugh haters. I've kind of gotten off that bandwagon at this point, but, you know, it was a time that I did it. I'm sorry.
I worked with my dad construction. Basically, if you're in the car, you're listening to Rush Limbaugh. So I remember a bunch of those parody commercials. Unfortunately, I did not hear the Spatula City one, but I would have gotten it until yesterday. So
it was just this weird eye-opening moment, and there are some gags that just show up in this and then just go away, and you never see them. Like, I wanted to see more of the dude with this world of animals.
Yeah. They never addressed that after he started throwing poodles out the window.
That was the best bit in the whole movie. Here on Pedro's World of Animals, we teach poodles how to fly. And he just throws a poodle out the window, and you just get the wide shot, and it lands on a pile of other poodles.
Badgers. We don't need no stinking
We don't need no... No, it's he says it 3 times, like, badgers. Badgers! Badgers! We don't need no stinking badgers! And then that's the end. You never see him again. He's just gone. I want a whole movie of that guy. And that great line where he's like, "Where did you find this guy?" And he looks at him and he's like, "I thought you hired him." He's just like nobody. He just came out of the ether to do his weird animal show.
Yeah, like the whole turtles and suction cups.
Turtles are nature's suction cups. Watch. He just throws it up. Oh, I could. That's great. And then they did bring back the karate instructor. They set him up, and then later on he had the wheel of fish, which was extra funny because the actual wheel of fish had actual fish on it.
Yeah, it's like, ooh, red snapper. It was definitely a little bit of Asian exploitation there, but it was still funny.
You can still get away with that in the late 80s.
Yeah.
I don't know. This movie just brings me so much joy to watch it, to talk about it. It's one of those. It's a little bit of a cult classic, so you don't not everybody's seen it. So it's a joy when you meet somebody oh, you know UHF. I like UHF too. Ah.
This is on Amazon Prime right now. If you guys haven't seen it. If you don't have Amazon Prime, the DVD is probably $5 to $7. It's definitely a fun movie.
It has been on Netflix in the past. It is not currently on Netflix. It may come back again, but it is so much fun. It's one of those you can watch over and over again. You don't need to watch it every year or whatever, but the jokes still come back and they're still fresh, and and it's inspiring too. I mean, it really is that moment, when he's all down in the dumps about how the station's not going to do good, and he leaves. He has, the Weird Al character's trying to do the Uncle Milty's Playhouse thing, and just doesn't work. And so he just hands the mic to Stanley Spadowski, and he's like, "You do it." And then he goes to the bar, everybody's watching Stanley Spadowski be Stanley Spadowski, and the him giving the speech about the mop. The speech about the mop is great, Tony. That's just so inspiring. He's just talking about a mop, but he's so passionate about, like, this is my mop. And it's not as good as the mop that I had before, but sometimes you just gotta, like, you gotta get on there and, like, get them stains up, and you got, and, like, they're playing the battle hymn, and they're like, da 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 da. That scene's awesome. I love it.
Sitting there telling all the kids, but it's really the adults that are, like, fully resonating with it.
I think everybody resonates with him, though. Again, it's about the passion. It's about how it's not about removing all the artifice and stuff. And the fact that the other guy in television, it's interesting. Again, it's about two TV executives competing with each other. It's not about some flowery creative type. Although, again, Weird Al is sort of that dreamer type in the movie, but he's also the guy who's calling the shots, and it really makes a case that you gotta have, even on the producer level of movies and TV and all that stuff, you gotta have somebody who can at least recognize someone with a great vision. And not just, we're just gonna put whatever crap up there, people will eat it up. Yeah, Sharktopus. That sounds like a good thing. I hate these people.
And I'm sure he had to face a lot of adversity for the types of music he was making, because like his parents were against the idea. He went to school to be an architect. He got a master's degree, and like he still chose to make parodies of music and everything. He chose what he wanted to create. So I feel like this is a big part of that. Might be his only movie he ever created, but it seemed like he had a lot of passion for it.
And I still think, even though he's not making movies anymore, if you watch his music videos, he designs and plans a lot of those. I don't know if he directs them necessarily, but all that stuff comes out of his head. So you have those like really long shots for the music video of Tacky. And
Tacky was one of my favorite songs and videos that he's made in a while. And
it was a cool video. I gotta say, I keep coming back to Aluminum Foil from that album, though. With aluminum foil.
Yeah, the video for that was a solid album. Like, I keep expecting that eventually he's gonna put something out that I don't like, as far as like a whole album. But that was just top to bottom good.
Do you think he's gonna keep making albums? Because he's out of his contract with that album now.
It sounded like he was kind of going the YouTube thing, where every like few months he might put out put out a single.
Yeah, that's what he was talking about. I imagine he'll eventually compile new stuff into an album so you can buy it.
Yeah.
But I don't know the business side of any of how that works. I'm way more about movies than I am about music. Although I like music, I'm more into the minutia of like the producing side of like, ooh, who's been cast in this movie and all this stuff, and I have no idea what's going on in music. I just every once in a while, I really, speaking of Amazon Prime, really love their Amazon Prime music program, and I talked several months back about listening to the blues. I'm still into that. They just put on my classic blues station and get a little bit of upbeat blues going on. Oh yeah.
I haven't even used their streaming service yet.
You mean the music?
Yeah.
Oh, it's a little bit annoying because you can't create your own station. Like, you have to start with one of their bases. So if, like, for instance, I have a station created on Pandora that I created using the Trans-Siberian Orchestra as a seed, because I like Trans-Siberian Orchestra, and then it gave me all this other stuff. I can't do that in Amazon Prime because they don't have a Trans-Siberian Orchestra station, and I can't tell them, I want to create a station based on these people. So that's kind of a drawback. And they don't have some of the more popular modern artists, but I don't really care about that. So
yeah, you're going blues.
I'm going like, if it's newer than 20 years, I'm probably not listening to it.
There are a few good ones. I'm wondering if we should do our questions early because most of them are actually related to this movie.
Well, okay, let's go ahead. I feel like I've said my piece about the movie, and it's not that early. We're about 20 minutes into the podcast. So we try to do this every week if we get enough questions. We want you guys to send them in. Anytime is fine. We ask for them right before the podcast. But if you have a question, weird, interesting, you want to tell us about something, send it to @HEPodcast, and you may get on the air. Tony, what is the first question for the week?
This is from Hannah Elizabeth, more specifically her Apples Over Oranges account. Her YouTube videos have just launched. It's a really cool channel. You should check it out, Apples Over Oranges. She asks us, if you could get Weird Al Yankovic on the podcast as a host, what movie would you want to review with him?
Wow. That is a good question.
It's like, do you play it serious, or do you go like something absurd like The Room?
I don't.
You could go like Citizen Kane.
You might could get some material out of Citizen Kane. I think that you would want to go with something like not slapstick completely. I think that you could kind of make it comedy, but I think that Weird Al's a very smart guy. I mean, as you mentioned, he went to school to be an architect. He's incredibly successful, and 99% of the time, when I hear about somebody that's incredibly successful, it's not just them doing their thing. They've got some really good knowledge about something. So I don't ever like to put down, celebrities and stuff, because I think that they work hard to get where they are, and especially somebody like Weird Al, who's...
lucky, but the ones that sustain themselves are the ones you can tell there's some definite intelligence there.
Yeah, and so it would... Man, that's a tough question. You know what?
I would rather be in the
this
room
is a
to
joke,
hear his
and it's
commentary.
also the truth. Are you ready for my answer?
Sure.
Ed Wood. For those of you who don't know, Ed Wood... By the way, was that you? It got changed back. Somebody's been messing with our calendar, putting down that we're watching Ed Wood every week, and we keep changing it, and somebody keeps changing it back.
I think it's because you did, like, everything in this series with Ed Wood.
I changed everything in the series back, though. I went to edit. We use Google Calendar to map out our week so we know what we're doing, and everybody's, like, on track with, like, okay, we're going to have these tasks, and we're meeting here, and all this stuff. This is great. And at some point, Ed Wood got put in, and I've tried to remove it, like, 3 times, and it will not go away. But... if I could have, because I think that that's a very smart movie. There's a lot of things that are funny about it, but it is not necessarily a comedy. It's a biopic that it's about a very odd individual, and I think that, I feel like Weird Al would have some very interesting insights, and it kind of ties in too with what we were saying about, people following their passion. Ed Wood, as bad of a filmmaker as he was really trying to make something, that he thought was cool. He just was not good at it.
Yeah.
So I would love to hear Weird Al's take on Ed Wood. By the way, that's the movie for next week.
Is it? Did you just decide that?
I just decided that.
We forgot to have our meeting for...
It'll be on the calendar. We might as well watch it, Tony.
Well, we've been talking about it since we watched Glenn or Glenda.
What's the next question?
The next question is, which movie would you want to be the star in a parody of? Which movie would you want to be trapped in? And that is by David Webb, our good friend Doc Occupant on Twitter.
Ooh, a parody of a movie that I would want to be the star of. What do you think, Tony? I'm going to push this one back on you because I'm a little bit stumped on this one.
For some reason, I was actually thinking of a movie that sort of is a parody.
Oh, yeah?
I was thinking Cabin in the Woods would be fun, except for the fact that I wouldn't last very long.
So you just want to be in Cabin in the Woods, really?
I was
you want to be in a parody of Evil Dead?
Yeah, basically.
Okay.
I think that would be pretty fun. Any horror parody would be a lot of fun because it's just so, like, slapsticky.
I'm trying to think of, like, I don't know, like...
What movie universe would you want to be trapped in?
They're coming out with, like, the Baywatch movie, which is going to be a parody of the old show. I think I wouldn't mind being in that, Tony.
You would just want to be, like, pretending to be a lifeguard?
I would just be an extra on the beach. People just running by in slow motion.
Yeah, but you could go do that in a few parts of Florida. Just go sit on the beach.
That's true, like, but, you know.
It's got to be something that you don't always experience.
I'm excited for that movie, by the way. A little bit. Like, it's just because The Rock is in it, and I assume he's going to be playing David Hasselhoff's character, and that is just, I can't imagine. If they give it the whole, like, Miller and Lord 22 Jump Street treatment, not that Miller and Lord are doing it, but I think that's sort of the direction they're hoping to take it. And they actually do it right, you know. It could suck, obviously, but I could see that movie being hilarious with The Rock.
That's insane.
Why do I have this in
I
here?
had no idea that this was happening.
Great movie. I couldn't reinsert my DVD tray into my laptop that I have in my lap because it had the fall in it, so I had to take the DVD out. I'm sorry.
just automatically start playing a movie during
I
the
mean,
podcast.
I would just check out for the rest of the podcast because that movie's awesome. So good.
Like, that guy's been in so many different things lately, the guy from The Fall. Like, he was Ronin.
Oh, was? Yeah, he was! And I saw it, like, I remember, because I just was rewatching The Fall, like, yesterday or the day before. And I saw him and I was like, who is that guy? Like, he's a good actor. And he's really good in The Fall. What is he doing? He's also in *Halt and Catch Fire*, which I have not completely got into, but I'm enjoying what I'm watching of it. He's the main dude in *Halt and Catch Fire*. So,
he's also Legolas's dad in the Hobbit movies.
Oh, he is, isn't he? I didn't even...
Yep.
Once you said that, I was like, oh, yeah. Anyway, that guy's good.
His name is Lee Pace, I believe.
Yes, it is. Super method in The Fall, too. Like, he plays a dude who is paralyzed from the waist down, and for the entire shooting time of that movie, he did not move his legs. Like, because... Partly because he's method, but also because they were dealing with an extremely young actress, and they needed her... Basically, they wanted her to believe what was... as much of it needed to be real as possible for her. So they actually let her believe that he was paralyzed from the waist down. I think we talked about this on we did our review of The Fall, but that was a long time ago.
I don't even think we mentioned that because that's the first time I'm remembering hearing it, but you might have. That was like within the first 10 episodes, I think.
Was it? That's a great movie. Great movie.
That is a fantastic movie.
I'm so sad. It's got like 50-something% on Rotten Tomatoes. It needs...
Doesn't make sense.
What?
That makes no sense at all.
It is absolutely... I'm gonna say one of, and by one of, I don't mean one of, I mean one of my favorite movies. Like, just period, my favorite movie. I can't think of a movie that does everything right better than The Fall. I love that movie so much. It hits every single one of my just soft spots, and it's perfect and beautiful.
Review it with the happy hipster.
I might do that, actually. That's a good thought. I'm gonna make a little note right here. I'll wait to do that. It'll be fine. That'll be coming out this week too, by the way. Go check out those videos.
Sorry. It was one of my favorite movies that we've ever reviewed. It's one that I actually went back to afterwards. I usually don't do a lot of rewatching of movies, so check out The Fall. Really,
it's gorgeous.
That's a good one.
It's so gorgeous. Anyway, and Lee Pace is good in it. Did we have? You said there was 3 questions?
There is one more.
All right. What's the last question, Tony?
This is from Priority and Default on Twitter. Caleb asks us, have you ever worried that reading a review of a book/movie that you like would change your opinion of the book or movie?
Excuse me. Worry is not the right word for it. I have occasionally hoped that reading a review would change my opinion of a book or movie. Because a lot of times, I mean, I did this with not Chinatown, I'm sorry, Big Trouble in Little China. We made a mistake reviewing those two things real close together, Tony.
Yeah.
The mistake is mixed up in my head. But when I didn't like Big Trouble in Little China, I went and read as many reviews as I could because I was like, I know all you people love this movie. Break it down. Tell me why. Give me specifics in little tiny chunks that I can understand, and I will get on board. I will get on board with what your reasoning is. I just didn't, like... I got a little bit of...
it's just the context of it. You didn't have it growing up. You didn't watch it at, like, every sleepover for 3 years in your childhood. Like, you didn't have a lot of that for it. Like, it's just too good of a movie when you're a kid. A lot of kids don't even realize how bad at doing what he's doing Jack Burton is. They just think he's awesome because he was Kurt Russell.
But the other one that I did kind of soften up on a little bit was Birdman. Because I was really just disappointed by Birdman. I felt like the story was kind of weak. And I remember reading a Reddit comment somebody made that, sort of talked about how that maybe it was about, everybody kind of being fake. And how that, that was the point of it, that it was all facade and, all of it. And that kind of, like, sort of clicked it a little bit more with me, although I still don't love that movie. But sometimes, reading a review will actually improve my opinion. Most of the time, if I read a negative review, it just kind of makes me sad. I don't feel like it changes my opinion. I'm just like, oh man.
Yeah, I
But
get that.
dinosaurs, guys, come on! Jurassic World, dinosaurs! That was
It's like
fun!
the rare anti-Mad Max review and stuff like that. Like I get a little bit mad at people. Like I remember getting really mad after Avatar came out, which isn't the best movie, but there are so many people that were just like, "Oh, this is what's killing cinema" and all that. I'm like, have you ever just enjoyed a movie in your entire life?
Did you enjoy Avatar? Or no, Avatar you're talking about the big one. I thought you meant the
James
Last
Cameron
Airbender.
one, not,
I was like, I feel
not
like
Shyamalan.
some of those may have been a little justified for talking about the Last Airbender.
The best way to watch Avatar, the Last Airbender, is to just look up like the trailer and see the cool stuff that happens and never watch the rest, because that's about as good as it's gonna get.
I watched Avatar. I understand that it's not the best movie in the world, but I also understand why it did pretty well. There's a broad appeal there.
Yeah,
it's not a.
The cartoon was fantastic though.
There's a cartoon. Oh. You
Last
keep
Airbender.
switching back and forth between them. Don't do that to me. Anyway, there's like James Cameron is making, in that movie in particular, he's making a movie that you've seen before with no like twists or new things. It's just kind of a new world that you may not have really been into, but and you could argue that there's not been a lot of staying power for the movie. It was a big phenomenon when it came out, and then is anybody still like, oh man, Avatar's the best? I think people liked it when it came out, but then they just sort of moved on. It's not like something that really stuck with them. But still, he made an incredibly successful movie that doesn't have anything wrong with it, quote unquote. I mean, a lot of films get a lot of stuff messed up, and even though the story is simple, he tells a simple story straight through. There's no surprises. There's nothing like crazy happening coming out of left field. It's just a really basic, environmental friendly, save the earth kind of feel-good story. And he, again, there is something to be said for being able to appeal to the lowest common denominator. Not everything has to be Primer.
Yeah. If everything was Primer, we'd probably have I can't say we'd have a smarter society because that movie still confuses me.
I enjoy Primer. When is Shane Carruth going to make another movie? When is The Modern Ocean coming out? Shane Carruth made Primer, for those of you who don't know.
I'm not entirely sure, although he needs to tone some of it down a little bit with what was the second one we watched from him?
Upstream Color.
Yeah, Upstream Color. There was some really cool stuff there, but he's a weird guy. I can't even imagine having a conversation with him.
Okay, so I don't think he's a weird guy at all. I think he's a very, very, serious guy. I think that you could have a very, very sort of in-depth conversation. He may even be a little bit boring. I'd be willing to bet that, not boring, boring's probably not the right word, but he seems like a person who's very, very focused on his art and the art of filmmaking, and if you were talking about something that wasn't that, I don't know that he would be... I don't know. I haven't met the guy at all, but he just strikes me as someone who's just laser focused on what he's doing, and I don't think it would be confusing to talk to him. He may have things to say that you don't necessarily understand or you haven't thought about as much as he does, but he doesn't seem like... He's not some weird wacko guy. He's just got a very, very specific method of filmmaking that he's going to do, and he's he's sort of like that... the Nick Pizzolatto model, right? Which I've complained about with Nick Pizzolatto, and I'll complain about with Shane Carruth. You gotta be willing to let other people collaborate with you. Nick Pizzolatto was insistent that he write all of True Detective and all of True Detective Season 2, although we did, in our review, we talked about, I guess there was a co-writing credit on this last episode that aired. But regardless, the kind of artist that shuts everyone else out and says, no, my vision is my vision, and only I can do it the way I want to do it, I think it's a little bit short-sighted and a little bit demeaning of the vision of others.
Yeah.
I think you got to open up, and we talked about this in Upstream Color, but I'll say it again, that you've got to respect that you're not the only smart person in the room. I know sometimes it seems like it, but there's a lot of other great filmmakers out there, and a lot of other great writers, and especially in the art of filmmaking, because it's so collaborative, he didn't make what I thought would be a great movie, a topiary, because he wasn't partly because of budgeting and stuff, but also he couldn't let it go. He couldn't like outsource some of the stuff to some people or like make it a little bit more commercially viable. And the studio was like, listen, if you're gonna make it this way, we can't give you the money that you want. And he held the line, and I guess that's admirable to a point. But I've read that script, and it's a fascinating idea, and I don't get to see it be made into a movie now because of his hard line on I want it to be done this way, and wouldn't accept like the sort of outsourcing the CG. He wanted to do all of it himself, apparently.
That only has worked in like Monsters so far.
Yeah, if you're already a CG artist guy, it works. If you're an auteur filmmaker who paints really beautiful pictures with film, but may or may not be the greatest computer animator, it might not be. Anyway, I'm not here. This is not the Shane Black bashing hour. I just want to see great stuff get made, and sometimes that attitude of I'm the only one who can do it, and I'm the only one who understands my vision. It's useful to a point, but beyond that point, it can actually hurt your chances of getting something done. And sometimes getting something done is better than getting something done that's not exactly the way you wanted it is better than not getting anything done at all, in my opinion.
That actually reminds me a little bit of what happened with John Wick. Like, if you look up the director and writer for that movie, he used to be just a stunt choreographer. And, like, over the course of his career, fight choreographer, excuse me. He had all these ideas for stuff that he really wanted to do that he kind of kept out of the movies he was working on because he eventually wanted to write a script. And it shows a little bit that he's not the greatest writer in the world because there are parts of that movie that start to lag. But you definitely can't argue with the choreography in it.
No, and the cinematography on that is beautiful as well. I think the same thing was true for Shoot 'Em Up, which was just an insanely fun movie. If you guys have seen that.
That's one of my favorite over-the-top action movies ever.
It was a guy, like an action, I don't know if he was a stunt coordinator, but a guy who like would help, plan out action scenes in the movies. And there would always be a thing that he was like, let's put this in there. Like, oh, that is way too over the top. So he just like put that in his little idea bin and was like, I'll do this in my movie, and I'll do that. And so he had like all of the things that were too ridiculous for other movies to do in one scene. He put them all in one movie and gave it to a character who ate carrots all the time instead of smoking and stuff, which I loved.
Yeah. Plus, how many movies do you get to see where somebody kills like 4 people with carrots in various ways?
And yes, that's
Paul Giamatti was awesome in that movie. I love Paul Giamatti.
He does some weird stuff, but yeah, when he hits, he's good.
Yeah, not like Lady in the Water.
Well, I don't know if that was his fault. Again, he's a working actor, and he'll take roles for the money that may not be the greatest roles. And I can't disrespect that. I mean, I watched a really bad Asylum movie this week. I mean, really bad, called Asteroid vs. Earth, and that was one of the ones. You mentioned being sorry for the people in, was it Megashark versus
Megashark
Crocosaurus?
versus Octo, or Giant Octopus, yeah. No, It was the crocodile one.
Yeah, it was Megashark versus Crocosaurus. When we went way back when we did the review of Megashark versus Crocosaurus, Tony mentioned like, I just felt so bad for everybody involved. I didn't feel that way in that case, but in this one, the script was so bad, and you can see these people trying to make something out of it, and they're not the greatest actors in the world, but they're people who are just trying to get paid to do their work, and just to see them trying to make something out of these awful lines and add some emotion to it was just like, oh, come on. Like, why can't it be a little bit better? Anyway, so I empathize with you in that moment, Tony.
It was kind of interesting. Yesterday we got to do my first bit of like acting other than reading like one of the stories for our old short story competitions.
Oh yeah, we're making a
yesterday.
commercial,
That was
Tony.
fun. What's that?
I said we're making a commercial.
Yeah.
We're hopefully gonna put it on YouTube. Everybody gonna see us.
Yeah.
Know how ugly we are.
Especially me. Just like glowing because my lighting is just
I can fix that in post, Tony. Don't worry. I can take some of that down a little bit. I did some genius editing stuff with that, by the way. You're not gonna, like, nobody who watches that video is gonna be blown away like, oh my gosh, I can't believe he did that. But in my mind, I was like, this works better if I move this back here, but leave that audio down there and doing this. And I was just like, oh! It was just a little thing, Tony. I just moved some,
Being all slick with it, getting better
yes.
at video editing.
I gotta tell you about a weird experience I had though, Tony. And this story starts like 2 years ago. When I was on Reddit, and I see this author doing an AMA about a story that I'd read, like stumbled on. You know, stumble upon, you click and you stumble and it gives you like new interesting stuff.
Yeah, and you fall into a stumble loop where you're just like not even really reading it. You're just kind of subconsciously clicking.
Right. Well, so there was actually a story that I did read. It's called The Egg, and many of you may have read it, but it's on the internet. I think you can read it for free. I'll put a link to it so you guys can check it out for yourselves. It's a cool story. You know what? I won't give it away. It's an interesting story. You should read it. But the author was talking about his story that he had written, and you know, like everybody, he's like, yeah, everybody really likes this, you know, the egg story. I did write a novel, but it's not, you know, it hasn't gotten a lot of attention, and it seems like that most people aren't responding to it that as well. So, you know, that's cool. And some guys were like, you know, well, link me to your novel and I'll read that too, you know, because I like the egg so much, I'll watch that. And at the time, I was like, you know, this guy, I mean, he wrote this one short story that got big on the internet, big whoop-de-doo, and now he's like, oh, my novel's not doing so well. I don't freaking care.
This relates to Doc Ock's question earlier.
Yeah, like, and I think it was partly because of, not that he was bad-mouthing anything, really, but he seemed a little bit like, I guess it's not that good, you know, sort of, whatever. And like, so it made me predisposed to kind of not really be that interested. And then that thread, I'd completely forgotten about that scenario. That thread came back up on Reddit recently in a best of. You know who that author was? And you know what that novel was, Tony?
The Martian by Andy Weir?
It was The Martian by Andy Weir. Now being made into a major motion picture by Ridley Scott that everybody freaking loves. Yeah. And I enjoyed it.
Matt Damon right out front.
And so my elitism from way back when, I didn't even realize, like, I remember The Egg as a story. The Egg is a good story. And, like, then I may have had some kind of subconscious little tick when I read Andy Weir's name for The Martian, but I had no idea. But, like, I read The Martian, I was like, okay, this is actually kind of fun. I liked it, you know, I kind of trashed it for the first little bit. It doesn't have the deepest characters or anything, but okay.
Well, the thing it did very well is, like, it gets worse. Just over and over and over again. And sometimes that can be bad, but sometimes it's just fun and interesting and kind of edge of your seat, so.
But it was just such an odd, moment of clarity where I was like, I cannot believe. Like, I could have been reading The Martian before all of you people. I could have had it first, Tony. I failed as a hipster. I could have read it before it was popular, and I was like, it's not popular. I'm not interested.
That's like anti-hipster, though.
I guess. But seriously, the takeaway from that is don't badmouth your work. And it's hard for any artist to do. He's like, well, I guess it's not that good. And I think we did it earlier in the show, Tony. I think we talked about, like, yeah, well, we're not all that good. We're kind of still figuring stuff out. Screw that. We're awesome.
Our skills are catching up to how awesome we are.
But you can turn people off with that kind of negativity, and it's not healthy, and it doesn't get you anything. I think people don't respond really to false bravado either, but you can be excited about what you're doing. So anyway, go on you, Andy Weir. Apparently it didn't turn off everybody else, and I'm glad, because people making money off of their art and being successful and all that stuff expanding out, the movie is probably going to bring more attention to the book, and that's just all great, even if it sucks. It's great for him that he's found this success. Don't sell yourself short, is what I'm saying.
For sure. And I know Ridley Scott's a little bit past his prime as a filmmaker, or it seems like that. I have a feeling he could nail this one pretty well. Like
He
it's a
needs to,
more
yeah.
mature story. It's smaller.
I think that the benefit here is that he's adapting a known property. He's adapting something that already existed. Like, everybody likes the story. If he doesn't mess with the story too much and he just does what he does best and brings amazing filmmaking to the table and marries that to the story, and we already have an amazing actor in there, I think that we can have something special. I can't guarantee anything, but everybody complains about remakes and Hollywood adapting everything, and I think that what is the problem with making something that people have already resonated with? You know, particularly a book. I love book adaptations if they're done well.
Yeah.
You know,
definitely.
I just finished watching the Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell adaptation, which was incredible. And if you can recognize, like, oh, hey, there's something in this story that people enjoyed that got people going, let's take those things and put them in a movie somewhere. And if you, especially with a story like The Martian, it's not like a literary classic, you know, like, I don't know, like some stories are built on the words and like the flow of it. Stephen King seems to really suffer from that, where the storytelling isn't exactly the strong point. He's just got such compelling writing and prose. I'm not saying his stories are bad, but you can just read what he's writing because he writes it in such a almost naturalistic way. It's hard to describe how great Stephen King is at writing, but sometimes the stories aren't great, which is why the adaptations get, you know, a lot of times aren't that great.
Yeah, if you go a little too Stephen King with the adaptation, you get some pretty weird stuff happening. Like, you've got to kind of make it your own license. Like, you look at how they did The Green Mile, and that's like one of the most memorable movies I've ever seen.
Right, and the trick is you just, like, especially with The Martian, that's not a story that's built on the strength of, like, you know, strong, like, deep literary roots. It's just, you know, it's, again, there's nothing wrong with the writing. It's clean, basic writing, but it's the story there and the character as you get to know him of dang it, I can't believe I forgot the guy's name.
The engineer?
Mark. No? Is it Mark?
Mark
Watney, yes.
Yeah,
Boom! I'm going to edit that so it sounds like I got it right away. The character of Mark Watney, like, all that stuff ties in together. And really, like, compels you to go forward. So I think that's awesome.
For sure.
By the way,
you got to remember, Ridley Scott has messed up at least one book adaptation.
What was that?
I am pretty sure it's the Book of Exodus, his recent Moses story.
Okay, well, that's true. I want to talk about, speaking of literary classics, I got this in the mail just recently. The Familiar, the new book by Mark Z. Danielewski, book 1 of 27. They're all going to be 880 pages.
Tell them what the 27 series book is about, or 21.
Well, apparently, look at that. Look at how gorgeous that is. This is also heavy as a brick, Tony. I mean, this book is freaking giant. I mean, there's pages with words on them too that are, you know, yeah. But some of the words are like, oh, look at that one. Look at that one. It's a YouTube. It's in the. I don't want to hold it like that because I don't want to mess up the book. But, so great. Anyway. From what I'm told, it's a story about a little girl and her cat, Tony. 27 books, 880 pages each. Story about a cat.
That's going to take up, like, almost an entire bookshelf.
I intend
27, 800 word or 800 page books on there.
I gotta say that, by the way, as heavy as this thing is, it's going to need a strong bookshelf, too. I mean, really heavy, like this magazine quality paper, like that thick, a lot of it's like glossy paper and just anyway. But the opening prologue is sort of these almost deity type figures talking to humanity about how that they're trillions of years old, but that they still haven't conquered death, and that, you know, even after death there's war, and like you kind of get this sense that they're setting up this larger mythology, and then they go from this giant macro scale down to whoop, little girl thinking about tests in her bedroom, in classic Mark Z. Danielewski style. It's got text going all weird places and everything. I showed you a little bit of it. If you've read House of Leaves, it looks a little bit like House of Leaves, but I'm liking what I'm reading so far. I'm not super far in. I'm on like page 50 or something. So
I bet you that is a man who does not want to own an e-reader.
the sad thing is, it is
feeling...
available for Kindle, but like all the reviews on Amazon.com are like, "Don't buy this for Kindle. Don't buy this." Excuse me. Don't buy this for Kindle. And I gotta say, I mean, look at like, there's some of these where you have to turn the page sideways. Don't buy that for Kindle. Okay?
Yeah.
Just don't. Oh, look, here's one that just, I don't know what this is. It says Square One right on the page. That's awesome. Little writing.
He's a man in love with physical books. I really enjoyed House of Leaves, too. That was a good story. I've always thought that there could definitely be a good movie with that.
That's one of those, like...
I'm more talking about the part that's...
Yeah.
The documentary part, more than the side stories about the guy reading it and having that in the chest in his apartment, all that sort of stuff. Like,
I think that there's like
void.
a really... Okay, so here's my vision of it, Tony. It's like an experimental film, like some weird French, like, impressionistic kind of movie, at least through some of it, but it's an HBO series.
That would be awesome.
Like a 10-episode HBO series of House of Leaves, where it just, like, cuts in between the random, like, just embrace all of the storylines and, like, throw in, like, weird sort of film editing techniques that would sort of mirror kind of what's going on with the text in the book. I could see it being done and being, I don't know if it would be good, but it would be the weirdest and most fascinating television show I'd ever seen.
Something that not even HBO might take a risk on.
You know what's weird to me is how me and my wife are rewatching Z Nation because she didn't watch all the episodes. I got so into it, I was just like, I'm gonna watch them all now. Go away, you know, because I get back. That was back when my schedule was different from hers, and so I'd watch stuff kind of like when I got off of work or whatever, and she'd be asleep. But that show does some really interesting experimental stuff with I don't want to give too much away, but like there's episodes that kind of like go inside a character's psyche. Which, I mean, it's technically, I guess, a dream, but like the way that they're rendered and everything is just, it's really interesting. That show for a zombie show is so oddly, it's not to the level of what I'm talking about as far as like being impressionistic, but it's not afraid to just kind of like, let's do something like really weird here and throw in an episode that just sort of like deals with one person's subconscious and then comes back and like, all right, now we're back to the apocalypse again. I love that show.
Yeah, I've only seen like 3 or 4 episodes, but it's definitely good. A lot better than I thought it was going to be.
That's another one that I'm kind of sad that it's got 50% on Rotten Tomatoes. Although I understand with that because, especially if you're a reviewer and you didn't have to watch the whole series, so you watch like the first 4 or 5 episodes, you're like, oh, all right, this is... But when you get all the way to the end, and, I mean, it doesn't go Game of Thrones on you exactly, but they definitely aren't afraid to kill people off. They're not afraid to, again, go odd places with the narrative, and it doesn't feel like your standard zombie show. It's not trying to be overdramatic. It's definitely having fun with the apocalypse. I mean, there's a great 30-second teaser that came out during Sharknado 3 that I was like, oh, Z-Nation's coming back! Murphy's coming back! Murphy's the best. But like it's sort of that vision of what you thought the apocalypse would, you know, when you're playing apocalypse in your head, you know, like what would I do if the zombie apocalypse come? Like these are the characters that you play as, and it's just fun. So, anyway, but I can handle all the bad CG and stuff too because I've inoculated myself to that. So maybe for other people that's a bigger problem.
Yeah, you pretty much inoculated me to some of it. There's still some unforgivable things, but I just deal with it now. Especially whenever I've started noticing bigger movies just doing the whole, like, not real bullets thing. Or not even blanks.
Oh, just like the muzzle flash?
Yeah.
Just pasting one on there?
Yeah, I just hate that so much.
Why don't they use real bullets?
I would rather
shoot that guy!
Bullets. Give it danger.
I think that there are some, like, Nigerian, like VHS films that do that.
Yeah.
I want to see that. That's something I'd really be interested in getting into, is like some of the Nigerian filmmaking scene that I've heard about, where people on the streets of, sort of poor African countries. I think actually they talked about it in Kenya when President Obama was going there. I heard a NPR special on that, where there's these kids, just like really poor kids in the slums, but they get their hands on a VHS recorder and they're making their own movies. I want to be there for that.
One of them the other day.
What?
I got contacted by one of them the other day. Like, I talked to him on Twitter for about like 30 minutes.
Was he a prince? Was he trying to transfer some money to your bank account?
This is a guy from Nigeria making movies, and like they're putting the muzzle flashes on there and everything. They're trying to get their stuff like fully uploaded to YouTube whenever they finish it up, like full-length movies. And it looks so cheesy, but it also looks like a lot of fun.
Well, what's do you know the guy's name? Let's pimp him out real quick.
I don't know the Twitter handle offhand, and it's probably been a month, so I don't want to go digging for it. If I can find out who he is, because I told him whenever his movie's ready to email us, and we'll definitely take a look at it.
Okay.
Like, I hope he gets back to us, because I kind of want to see this.
If we find a link or something to what this guy's working on, we'll put it in the description and in the blog post that we do on humanechoes.com. If not, we will let you guys know when we have some information about the Nigerian film that is trying to get Tony's money.
It was the worst but best CGI helicopters I've ever seen.
I've seen some of those like clips on Reddit, and again, to bring it back to sort of the theme of everything that we do here, making stuff is awesome. If you can't make something good, make something bad. It may not make you any money, but
yeah. And
do
the
it
next
for
thing you
you.
make won't be
Do
quite
it for you,
at it.
because it's important to get that out of your system. Not out of your system, but like it's healthy. It's healthy to go out and make a thing because you feel more confident. And I'm very excitable, Tony. Right?
It's a good thing.
Anyway,
today,
we should wrap up,
Tony.
Tony.
A podcast, and then we're gonna go straight up and make more stuff.
We will, yes.
All right, let's wrap this thing up. Thank you guys so much for listening. Thank you for keeping us afloat. The number one way to do that is to go to humanechoes.com and click on the PayPal link on the right-hand side of the website. We're going to keep making content, keep making all sorts of shows for YouTube, all this stuff, so long as we can, and the way that happens is through your guys' support. If you click on the donate button, you can give us a one-time donation, or you can subscribe for $1, $5, and $10 a month. We're actually adding a bunch of new stuff coming up for subscribers. It's going to be 2 extra episodes a month, and they're a little bit different. They're fun little 30-minute things, and we think they're going to be a lot of fun to put out there. So
yeah, we just recorded the first one with Joseph yesterday, and that was talked about artichokes for half an hour, Tony.
Well, that was like 12 minutes of it. We talked about all sorts of.
We did, but that was a lot of fun, and adding Joseph into the mix makes it a little bit of a new thing. It's only audio, so that's because I'm lazy. I don't want to edit another one, a video.
It's also harder to send that out privately to just our fans as well.
But that's definitely something that we are offering to our subscribers. We also want to mention, coming up here, Tony, Viewers' Choice Month.
Oh yeah, coming up real quick.
We have to announce that. When does this one come out? It's like on Friday. August is when you guys can start voting and promoting the videos that you want us to watch in September. We're not doing October this year because Tony wants to watch scary movies.
A lot of you probably remember last year, you basically go to the thread, you nominate a movie, the nomination period lasts for 2 weeks. Then we put those movies into a giant list. Because there's 4 Fridays in that month, you get 4 votes, and you can pick the movies that you want us to watch. You can be an evil person and put stuff like Hairspray on there.
No, you can't. Okay. Conditional, it can't be a movie we've already seen.
Yeah, that's the only condition for it, and probably keep it up to R-rated. Anything above that, it would be kind of weird to review.
Yeah. You can choose to torture us if you would like, and find the worst movies that you can. It's gonna have to be pretty bad, or you could try to find something that's too scary for me. In which case, I'll try to make a video of me watching it, because we're all about that content, Tony.
Or if you want to give us something that you think is excellent, like last year, we had a pretty wide variety of movies picked. We got to watch Candyman, which was awesome, and we both needed to see that. And then we also had to watch Hairspray and Glenn or Glenda. So do what you have to. we respect you guys enough that we won't just turn it down.
Yes.
As much as I'd
So
want
you
to.
have the reins. You have the power. In September, we will be watching the movies that you nominated and voted for. So get in there in August, nominate and vote for them. You got 2 weeks to nominate. We'll let you know when the voting's going to start. And we will see you next week with our review of Ed Wood.
See you next time, guys.
Bye.